Hey Sibs, it's been an emotional week here with the election and all. To say that we are as a family disappointed would be putting it very mildly. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it and I've written up something I really want to share with you. Many years ago I heard someone say, "I've decided I should respect the rights of my friends and family to be wrong for as long as they need to be." At the time I thought that was very funny, and Mary and I have repeated it to each other many times. I liked it because it let me feel I was being tolerant, noble even, when I avoided contentious topics or when I let statements I strongly disagreed with go unopposed, because I didn't feel I had any hope of changing the other person's mind. Why stir up angry discussions? I know my family and friends are good people. Does it really do any harm if some of them enjoy listening to right-wing talk radio and Fox News? Sure, I find a lot of stuff those guys say offensive or just plain wrong, but we should live and let live, right? I should respect their right to believe what they want. So I did my best to dodge discussing such things with family. I hid the folks on Facebook who constantly posted stuff that made me feel angry or uncomfortable. I'm here today to confess to you how very wrong I was. I took a coward's way out, and I am ashamed of myself. The vote I cast for Hillary Clinton here in California had no effect on the election. She was always going to get California's electoral votes. The real power of a citizen, anyway, is in influencing other citizens, not in their one insignificant vote. I may not have voted for Donald Trump, but I bear part of the responsibility for his presidency because I kept silent out of fear. That stops now. I will not be responsible for this sort of thing happening again. We need to talk. And I don't mean a single, one-sided conversation. I mean we need to all start talking to the people who disagree with us and trying to understand why we disagree. I need to understand why many good people I know and care about enjoy hearing and repeating things that I find offensive and even frightening. I probably need that more right now than I need to help them understand why I'm offended or frightened. However, I'm starting the conversation with this video, which is sort of one way, so here's how I feel. A 2016 Pew Research Center study of partisanship says that 55% of Democrats and 49% of Republicans say the other party makes them feel afraid. I'm definitely part of that 55%. When I heard Alex Jones shouting angrily on his show that President Obama and Hillary Clinton are demon-possessed, it struck me as simultaneously ludicrous and terrifying. Do the people I care about really believe the kind of things this guy says? I both can't believe it and fear it could be true. I think that's how this whole election has gone for Hillary Clinton's supporters. The things Donald Trump says and does are selfish, hateful, and childish to the point of ridiculousness. The thought of him being president absolutely terrifies us. We thought it surely must terrify everyone else too. At least everyone who isn't sympathetic to hate groups like the KKK. The majority of Americans are decent, kind, and loving people. No way could more than half of them vote for someone who seriously said we should attack the families of suspected terrorists and reinstate torture as a punishment. The majority of Americans believe passionately in freedom of speech and freedom of the press. No way could they vote for someone who's constantly threatening to punish individuals and organizations that criticize him. The more you look into Donald Trump's past behavior, the more ugliness you find. And I'm not talking about scandals that may or may not be really true. I'm talking about things he said and done right in the public eye. And this is not the same as Hillary Clinton's scandals, or even anywhere near it. I know it's too late to change anyone's mind now, but I have to get this off my chest. Hillary Clinton has been investigated dozens of times and cleared every time. The Hillary haters say she got out of every charge due to corruption, but I have another theory with at least as much evidence to back it up. She's been investigated over and over again because her enemies in Congress take every excuse they can to harass her and further damage her reputation. They're not even subtle about it. Congressman Chaffetz recently said he was preparing the paperwork to keep her mired in at least 2 years' worth of investigations if she were elected. There's your conspiracy, corruption, and abuse of power. She's like the black Google engineer I know who told me he gets pulled over by the cops at least once a month just because he looks suspicious. "Is this your car, sir? Do you live in this neighborhood? Where do you work?" And it worked. The constant investigations in combination with the constant stream of conspiracy theories and Hillary hate coming out of the right-wing media managed to convince something like 70% of Americans that she is untrustworthy. It's just human nature to assume that anything repeated often enough must be true. I felt that way myself going into this election, until I took a closer look at the facts. But with Trump, there's not even any doubt. He does and says awful things right out in the open. No conspiracy theories required. The speeches he gives sound just like the rhetoric dictators like Mussolini and Hitler have used to get into power. They also said everything was terrible and that it was all the fault of the establishment, minorities, and foreigners. It's not subtle, it's not hard to see. Did half of the country miss that history class? To be honest, I've ignored the news media most of my life. I didn't find it interesting, and I'm rather ashamed of that. But when Trump won the Republican nomination, I started checking Google News obsessively multiple times per day. I wasn't sure why at first, but then I realized I was looking for the report that would announce the end of Trump's run for president, because he had finally self-destructed, or the Republicans figured out a way to get rid of him. And so many times, I thought I saw it. I wasn't alone, the media thought so too. They gave Trump huge amounts of free airtime to report his many outrageous statements. I think a lot of them were also trying to say to the American people, basically, look at this guy. Are you not seeing this? Isn't it obvious that this guy is dangerous? When they showed Trump supporters, they focused on the ones attacking protesters and shouting racist insults and slogans. The trouble is, they were so busy reporting all the extreme things Trump said and did, and even more extreme things a small group of his supporters did, that they completely missed the big picture. The real news story was, how is it possible that Donald Trump continues to get even 10% of voter support in the polls, let alone 40% or more? There should have been a lot more serious, thoughtful news articles exploring why Trump was able to get the GOP nomination in the first place. Most of his supporters are decent, hardworking Americans. Why didn't we hear more about their issues? Why do they think Donald Trump is more likely to help them than Hillary Clinton? The opinion polls showed that most people don't actually like Donald Trump, so why are they willing to vote for him? Well, at least one person understood why and tried to tell us. In the summer of 2015, Michael Moore was already saying that Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee. Several months ago, he published an article in his blog explaining why Donald Trump is going to be our next president. A short video he made about Trump's appeal hit the nail so squarely on the head that the Trump campaign used it as a part of their own message. Watching that video was the first time I had any inkling of understanding how a normal, reasonable American could be enthusiastic about voting for Donald Trump. The act of voting is our most basic way of sending a message to our government. Perhaps the actual character of the candidate is largely beside the point if we feel passionately about the message they represent. The trouble with messages, though, is that they only work well if the sender and receiver are speaking the same language. And right now, the left and right sides of the country are not. So they look at the same message and they see two very different things. I will attempt to interpret, and I look forward to hearing whether you think I've got it right or not. Donald Trump's core message was, "Make America great again." To me, the literal meaning of those words makes little sense. America certainly has problems to be solved, many of them very serious, but if anything, the things I care about most, civil rights and social justice, have been getting overall better, not worse. Following that reasoning, the deeper meaning I see in these words is very sinister, because it sounds to me like a call to reverse those changes. To put it at its most extreme, the message I hear is, put straight white men exclusively in charge again, kick out the Muslims and the Hispanics, ignore the problems of minorities and women, and outlaw gay marriage. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton's message, "Stronger Together," brings to mind the better America and world I want to help create. A place where everyone is guaranteed fair treatment under the law and at work. A place where we all respect one another regardless of our differences. A place where no one suffers or dies because they just didn't have enough money to pay for food or health care. Now, I'll try to put myself in the place of Donald Trump supporter. Over the past couple of decades, my life and the lives of my family, friends, and neighbors have gotten much worse, and no one in Washington seems to care. We don't want charity, we just want jobs so we can support our families, but those are getting ever harder to find. The Democrats are all busy worrying about gay marriage, minorities, and refugees. They aren't saying or doing anything about helping us. Hillary Clinton's message, "Stronger Together," just sounds like more pandering to minorities to get their votes and stay in power. She isn't talking about helping us, just everyone else. The Republicans aren't much better, but at least they say they want to help us. The government used to listen to what we wanted and needed. Electing Donald Trump will force them to listen to us again. During this election, there's been a lot of talk about how we all live in our own bubbles and news echo chambers. The things the other side says make no sense to us and frighten us, so we tune them out. We only listen to the news and personal opinions of those we basically agree with. This is equally true on both sides of the political divide. We've isolated ourselves from each other, with the result that we have ever less understanding of the world as the other side sees it. We, and I'm including all Americans here, are ever more inclined to see the other side as, at best, hopelessly misguided and ignorant, and at worst, selfish, hateful, and malevolent. If that's how you see the other side, of course you're afraid of them and feel there's no point in talking to them. But I have good news for both sides. Most Americans are basically decent folks who just want the best for themselves and their loved ones and don't wish to hurt anyone else in the process. We need to keep that in the forefront of our minds and use it to reduce our fear and increase our empathy and curiosity. When someone expresses an opinion that offends you, or that we cannot understand at all, we need to remember that they came to that opinion based on their own experience, which is probably very different from ours. That experience makes their opinion make sense to them, just as our experience makes it seem incredible or offensive to us. They aren't seeing the same things we see and coming to an opposite conclusion out of stupidity, selfish, or malice. They see things that we don't, and maybe fail to see things that we do. We need to try to be curious to understand why their view of the world is different from ours. We need to talk to each other and focus on trying to understand why the other person's opinion makes sense to them, not convincing them that our opinion is the right one. Whether anyone changes their mind or not, we'll both be seeing the world a bit clearer and understanding each other better, which is a good thing unto itself. So, I've decided that I have a responsibility to strive to understand the opinions of my friends and relatives for as long as it takes for us to agree, at least, that everything's going to be alright. So that's it for this week. Until next time, I think we all need to keep calm and stay shiny.